A new dawn has begun, an experience we've never had before. The game is not only live as of now, but it has exponentially launched with many managers having already signed up for the coming season. Welcome to the FPL Addicts for the 2024-25 season. Here we go. The opening soundtrack is back, and so are the FPL Addicts back in business. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be watching around the planet, ladies and gentlemen. We've got quite a bumper edition. It's a small one, as per usual, talking about the new rules, the prices, position by position, and what we've been up to during the off-season. But without further ado, it's not just me part of a party today. Fortunately, there may be no Reidy. There may be no ref, but there is a guy that is a specialist in his own one-liners himself, and that is Quentin from FPL Amateurs Australia. Good evening to you, Quentin, and for the first time this season, welcome to the FPL Addicts podcast.
Good to be here, mate, and I love joining you for chats, mate. It's just it's not even about the FPL, mate. I just enjoy your company, so I'm always happy to come on.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we had quite a delightful chemistry during last season, especially not just your one-liners, but anytime you mentioned about Reidy sausages, mashed potato of Ebro Eze from Crystal Palace, and what would pair well with a steak dinner, and now our goal this year, which we failed last year, 10 minutes into our opening episode, that is talk about FPL. So we've just got to have to smash through the agenda. But before that, how's your off-season been? Because let's face it, it's been eventful with all of the sports that have been going on, but it does not last long at all.
No, most of my off-season has actually been playing football on Friday night. So I think I spoke to you. I was playing football this year and got injured at the start of the season, but I've managed to stay healthy for most of the season. So pretty much all my spare time has been playing football and watching the Euros.
How did you find the Euros or the Copa America, if you managed to catch a glimpse of it?
Yeah, actually it was crazy because my brain was ticking to like FPL at times when I was watching the Euros going, oh, well, hopefully they get through the game and we can, get them back for the Premier League season. And a couple of players actually looked really good at the Euros. So, very interesting to spend the off season still thinking about FPL.
As always, what plays a crucial role to how our episodes go and the twain we're able to establish, and that is the community. And it's undoubtedly our number one favourite loyal fan, and that is Colin Bugler. He's just decided to check in for yet another season. We must have done a good job based on his approval. Just about to go into the dentist chair, so we'll watch it later. Smash that like button. Thank you, as always, for your support. Now, Quentin, how excited were you 2 weeks ago when this game officially launched?
No, I was pretty pumped, to be fair, and I don't have any of those subscription services where you can actually build your team. I was just waiting for the game to unlock so I could finally start doing some drafts. So I wasn't that dedicated where I was using programs to make teams, but I was pretty excited when they opened the game, and a couple of rule changes this year actually makes it probably even a little bit more exciting than usual.
Great segue that, because we may as well just talk about the new rule changes. We'll go through it briefly because there are some major ones, and it could well change our approach in general as fantasy managers on how we tackle the game from here on in. So a season like no other, one was mentioned by the scout, and the headline is the ability to roll up to not 2, not 3, not 4, 5 transfers, not 2 anymore. Along with this, there's a mystery chip, along with a triple captain, the bench boost, and the free hit. And what that mystery chip will do, we don't know, and we won't find out until it's officially. It could be a teaser in December, but it'll be officially out in January next year. But hey, you've got to carry on playing without really knowing what's going on. But changes to point scoring as well. Now, with a goalkeeper, instead of getting 6 points, should they decide to score a goal, last being Allison away at West Brom in 2021, not only will they get 6 points, they will get 10 points now. And in the BPS, too, every time a player has been failed, they will also get points in the BPS. In your eyes, Quentin, does this change your approach much as a manager, these new changes, and what way?
Yeah, it does actually, because technically you can have multiple wildcards throughout the season, because 5 transfers, when I know last year when I was looking at doing the wildcard, there's some weeks where I only was going to make 4 transfers in the wildcard. So having 5 transfers, I think, changes the strategy around the wildcard, and maybe it looks at, you could set your team up for the first 5 game weeks of the season and then just bank your transfers each week if you don't have any injuries, and then look at doing a mini wildcard to then, go with the new fixture swing. So I think it's definitely changed the way we look at using the wildcard chip, and also banking transfers. There's probably going to be less hits this year because, last year you could only bank the 2. So I think with the more transfers banking this year, probably going to see a lot of people rolling transfers week to week, which I think offers another dynamic in what I think is strategy building, I guess, throughout the season. So I think it's just another exciting thing. And, with the chip strategy, I'm hoping that mystery chip is the Roman goalkeeper chip, where we can bench our goalkeeper and play another outfield player. That'd be sweet.
It was a great dynamic, that only because in one of our past episodes, very late on in the season, Reidy wanted the all-out goalkeeper chip where we'd be able to select 4 goalkeepers because he had no one starting up front. Yeah. The role transfers is intriguing. I've put a bit of thought about this. I was genuinely shell-shocked, which I think a lot of managers were. Some say it's a great move. Some say, does it take the tactical aspect out of a game? Maybe. But I think when you get up to about 3 role transfers, or maybe even 4, that's when you probably feel, because trends move very quick in our game, it's sort of, hang on, I've got to use one here. Let's use it and try and catch up with the trends. However, there were some circumstances, I feel, last year, especially in the festive period and the defensive crisis, especially in the last few weeks of the season, where those 5-role transfers could genuinely come in handy. How often do you feel that you're going to use 5 in one go, or do you feel you're just going to play the normal approach?
I think it leaves yourself to be flexible. So you could even use like the wild card as another free hit chip, right? And make a whole new team, but maybe keep 6 of those players who you want permanently, and the rest are sort of free hit players, and then use your 5 transfers to then change the team to how you want it. So there's a lot of different strategies. You can sit on 3 transfers and just keep 3 permanently and use the free transfer every week and just bank transfers like that, almost like a savings account, like a nice first time savings account when you're 16 and you get your first job.
Back. So. The analogies, they are back.
So, you bank a little bit of those transfers, and you use all that money to buy FIFA when it comes out in September. So,
I was wondering how long it took. It only took 8 minutes and 40 seconds according to Shopper.
But yeah, I think it offers different strategies, so which I think is good, because last year there's times where it felt like everyone was doing the exact same thing. So this is going to give a different pathway for people to take, and I guarantee there's not going to be a lot of people doing the exact same thing. I think there might be a small amount, but I think there's going to be more variety this year.
Correct. We'll get onto variety very shortly, because that is a true reflection on how the prices have been released for a lot of players in the game. But Gary, thank you very much for dropping by with a comment, and welcome back. And thank you so much, as always, for your continuous support for the channel, and welcome back to yet another campaign. Some may have noticed there's a different wallpaper about it too, which I actually quite like. I was not informed about it before tonight's episode, so it looks a bit more glamorous. Onto the role of variety. Let's talk about players, prices, how this is going to bring. Should we talk about 15 million Erling Haaland, just to kick things off? We won't, only certain prices we'll talk about, because we want to get the agenda going. But 15 million, did that come as a surprise for you?
I was sort of thinking about 14.5, but I think 15 million is actually a really good price for Haaland because it's now putting managers in a position where you're going to have to deplete your team if you want to keep the premium midfielder and Haaland. So I think that's probably the best thing about it. It's frustrating, but I think it's the right price, and I think it also offers now another element of variety in FPL.
In addition, to complement what you just mentioned there, his ownership, it would have been heading to Gameweek 1, was well in the trenches of 80%.
80, yeah, I think 85, 86, yeah.
When I woke up at 7 a.m. our time, this was about 6 to 8 hours after game launch, only 30%. He was I think it was the third highest owned forward behind the top two, which we'll get to in a moment, in Alexander Isak and Ollie Watkins. He said Haaland at 15. Yes, it's a surprise. About last season's top scorer in Cole Palmer at 10.5, which is whopping because it was 11 months ago today. He had a price fall to 4.9 million as a Manchester City player.
Yeah, and I think that price point for Palmer, from the season he had, understandable, but we saw a season without Nkunku fit. And looking at the preseason games, he's been taking penalties, which, that's not guaranteed that Palmer's going to lose penalty duties. But I feel like it's a different dynamic to this season, and it could take a few of the points away from Palmer, and he could be looking at a player that's not worth the 10.5, maybe 9, 8.5, sort of like a Saka last season. So I think the price point is a little bit sticky, but obviously Palmer, we saw what he did last season. So it's hard to argue about the rise in price, but it's also, I'm a little bit hesitant.
I think I've done really well the format of a game in terms of nailing the pricing, and really have to consider in terms of what premiums you have, because I think there's 5 at over 10 million now. You got Saka at 10, which I think he'll have a really good season. Son, who did start initially quite under the radar, but now he's getting a fair bit of traffic. Haaland at 15. Salah at 12.5, Palmer at 10.5. I think, Salah, Haaland, Palmer, and then the other two. There, you could really only probably fit 2 of them and probably still have a somewhat good team.
Yeah.
That a fair assumption. Yeah, we'll go. Yeah. You go into positions. Let's start with goalkeepers, just very briefly on each of the positions. Goalkeeper prices or any assets you feel that stand out heading into the season?
I think the Sanchez at Chelsea, I think 4.5 is a great price because I think he's the best keeper at the club currently, unless they go out into the market and get someone else. So I think that's definitely a nice price. Onana, I think it would have been nice if he dropped to 4.5, but that'd be crazy. I don't think they'd ever do that. But I think the keeper prices are pretty much bang on. I think Pope, he's still 5.0. I was kind of hoping with the injury last season he might have dropped to 4.5, but I think him being injured, they're reluctant to drop his price. But I think most of the prices are pretty fair. I think there's only a couple of 4.0 goalkeepers that might be in line for a start week 1, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be too many 4.0 keepers to sort of start the season.
I think for so Ariola, rightly so, up to 4.5. You got your premium keepers, Ray at 5.5. I think it's a season where potentially premium goalkeepers are redundant because we need to make the most of our 100 million budget. And probably it's more important than any other previous campaign because of how the players have been priced now. That's why I sort of feel that a 4.5, 1 or 2 of them would do the trick. Flecken from Brentford has had a fair bit of traffic. I expect Brentford to do considerably better as opposed to last season. 2 seasons ago when Ivan Toney, I think, was the 3rd highest scoring forward in the game. They were on fire, and their defensive record at home was sensational. It was their 2nd season in the big time. So that's probably a fair say on goalkeepers. We don't really need to spend a lot of time. Now, defenders is interesting. Should we start with Arsenal just quickly? Because they've all had a bump in price, White and 6.5, and now they've got their new signing as well from Italy, Cagliari. I apologise if that's a mispronunciation. He comes in at a fairly expensive rate. Does Arsenal assets give you attention at the moment?
I think it's the Arsenal assets are all going to be dependent on how the rest of your team is made up. So, I think Vardiel is like a lock-in for most managers. So that means you've only got room for maybe one more, 5.5 to 6.0 defender. And depending on whether you go in Haaland and Salah, you're probably not going to be able to fit that Arsenal defender in. But then also people that have got too many other players they want in the midfield might just go as their Arsenal player is the defensive asset, which is, a Gabriel or a Saliba. I think White's priced a little bit high, but he did have that sort of massive end of the season last year. But for me, I think at the moment, I'm probably going to pass if I've got Haaland in my team. But if I don't have Haaland, I might look at getting one of them. But yeah, they're not sort of priority for me at the moment.
I'm with you in that. I think going away to Aston Villa, at home to Spurs, and away at Man City in the first 5 weeks really isn't ideal. It's definitely not double Arsenal defence. Probably a consideration to maybe have one, considering they want to go for the title. But I think there's better premium options out there. And you wanted to touch on Vardiol very quickly, who's priced at 6. And for City, having a fair fixture run. Is he the standout premium to you, or is there someone else?
Yeah, I think he is. I think Trent also, he's a bit more expensive, but I think the way Slot's going to get Liverpool playing, I think it's going to benefit Trent a lot. I think it's going to not hide him defensively, but help him out a lot more defensively so then he can flourish in his attacking game, which is going to be good for FPL, which we've seen Trent can, at least have 12 attacking returns this season if all things go to plan. So I think Trent's probably the other premium pick. Trippier, I'd be happy to maybe go around Trippier, even though he's probably the best attacking option outside of Vardiel. But I think like the likes of Livramento could, be a nice backup option there for a lot less.
4.5 million defenders now too, because there is a fair bit of value, especially from sides that are starting the season with really good fixture runs. Particular ones that stand out in your eyes?
I think Leif Davis from Ipswich. A lot of people, obviously Ipswich aren't going to be world beaters. They're not going to be finishing in the top 10 in my opinion. But last season, looking at his season he had the most chances created from any player. So that's midfielders, strikers, defenders in the Championship and the Premier League. For me, that's an underlying factor. He's gonna be creating a lot of their attack. So he doesn't need to be getting clean sheets every week. I think that attacking upside is enough for me to think that he's a nice option at 4.5.
To complement Davis, I think not from Ipswich. I reckon Aston Villa's fixtures for defenders are really good, along with Everton's. I think Mikalenko coming in at 0.5 cheaper than Braithwaite is a favourable sign for him. Jordan Pickford's a fair, highest scoring goalkeeper from last season as well, but Mikalenko. Anderson from Crystal Palace. I think Palace and Everton rotate quite well, along with Newcastle. Dan Burn, he's got about still over 20% ownership. I think it's worth a choice. I think that's where like a moneymaker, we were talking about it in the running last season, because I know you love a bit of Rodrigo Muniz love, which we'll get to come over on. But I think it's 4.5 million defenders. That's where the bang for buck could well be this season. Midfielders now. I want to start with a bang for buck. Again, 6.5 million midfielders. Is it a minefield, or is it getting the right lottery ticket as part of a plethora of monopoly options? Standouts in that bracket.
In what price range, sorry?
6.5 million. Then we'll work our way up.
See, I think going below that, I think the 5.5 million, there's a lot more value there in terms of enablers rather than looking at those 6.5 to 6 million players, because I think only 0.5 is the next step up to the 7, which I think there's a lot better options there. So a few of the players that I like, is it Mavidi
from Leicester City?
From Leicester, I think Alenga, Hudson-Odoi. There's Hold on, I've got them written down. Give us 2 secs.
That's all right. While you get them down, I've got a couple just to name off. Morgan's Gibbs White. It depends if Chris Wood is lining up top as such. I think he could have a really good season, but I do like the other Forest midfielders. And Cuckoo is banging a lot in pre-season and wants to genuinely keep an eye on. Still a little bit hesitant on him, however. Then you got Brennan Johnson from Spurs. I think he can be a really good shout. But yeah, it kind of stacked, to be fair. 6.5.
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple of standout 6.5s like Brennan Johnson and Kunku. But then you're looking at the 5.5s that I mentioned. You've got Jacob Murphy from Newcastle, who I think has looked sensational in the preseason. At last season, at times he looked amazing. So I think he's definitely an option to look at. I think Kamada from Crystal Palace, watching their preseason game or the last few preseason games, he's been taking up Eze positions, which I think means that they're going to push Eze into the Elise role. So I think you could end up with almost like a bit of a dynamic duo. Probably not as lethal as Elise, but Kamada reminds me a lot of the way Matoma plays. Very good on his feet, very quick, great ball delivery, and can finish as well. So I think there's a little bit of upside there. And Minte from Brighton, he's
another one as well. Ridiculous. Now Grace is left too.
So Minte has been starting. I think it might be between him and Adingra on that side. And I think Minte at the moment has probably got the starting role to start week 1. And I think he's a great option as well. Good finisher as well.
I like it. It's a great range of options too. I think Brighton a very interesting one under the new manager in terms of how they start their season. Going up now in terms of how Gordon's had a price rise, Jared Bowen, Phil Foden up to 9.5, around that sort of territory, just before the double-digit bracket. Were there any surprises for you?
I was actually surprised at how cheap Rashford come back as well.
7 million? I'm not, to be fair.
I mean, he was terrible. He wasn't great last year, but I think a massive discount on what he can be. I think Foden's price is pretty fair. Grealish, I think he has the potential to be like that player that can be, 6.5, but also 8.0 value. I think he might be a bit of a steal start the season. But I think most of the prices in that range between the 8 to 9.5 million, I think it's pretty fair. I think Havertz Havertz is not a midfielder anymore, but I feel like his price is a little bit expensive as well when you're looking at forwards. Odegaard, I thought, is probably maybe a touch underpriced. I think around the 9 million is probably would be an accurate price for him. So I think you're getting a steal at 8.5. And Bruno 8.5, pretty cheap as well.
You mentioned Kai Havertz and the new position he's got now this season. He's one of many handful of players who've had their positions reclassified. Havertz is now a striker, and that just brings it to another gateway. Let's talk about strikers. Standouts in your territory there.
I think Isak is probably the number one standout. Even watching the preseason, he just looks like so sharp, just lethal. He hasn't even had to have that many chances in the preseason. He's just banging goals, and he's not missing chances. I think he might be getting maybe 2 to 3 chances a game in the preseason. He's scoring a goal and almost scoring a second. So he's been quite lethal. Watkins, we saw what he did at the Euros, but obviously we haven't seen any preseason, and he's probably not going to be back till nearly the season starts. But I think Menez is a player definitely to look at. I know you're waiting for me to say it,
chat.
but I'm waiting to see the connection with Smith Rowe, because we've seen Smith Rowe's move to Fulham. So I think if he can offer that, I guess, attacking or attack creation, I think Menez, it'll be time for Rodrigo Menez this season. If he can get the service that he needs, I think he can definitely be a good option. And I think there's one player from Southampton. I'm not sure whether he's going to start, but Mara in the preseason, he's been incredible. So good on the ball, brings players in and can finish. So I think he might be one for the watch list. And Mark Guiu?
Yeah,
for
5
Chelsea?
million at Chelsea. Is that right?
Yeah, the FM24 wonder kid is in real life killing it for Chelsea, and he looks amazing. He's actually manhandling defenders. It's like crazy. So I would have him start over Jackson every day of the week, but I'm not the coach. But yeah, those are a couple of people on Lancashire. Looks like a hybrid between Harry Kane and Evan Ferguson. So
Evan Ferguson, the next big thing. Well, that's what I said. He just hasn't shown up for a good while. Ferguson. Yeah, wow. That's a bit of a throwback. I will admit. Forward to me, I think Ollie Watkins is about 1 million underpriced at 9 million. I think I was expecting him to be at 10 million. Isaac is fair enough. Mateta, it's a big jump for him, 7.5. I was probably expecting him like 6.5, 7 to be fair, but he had a very good back end of last season. Tony at 7.5, about fair considering he didn't have that many games last campaign. Solanke gets a mini rise too. I think he's probably maybe under the radar, but there could be better options as of now. Manise at 6, Chris Wood at 6.
I think Cunha's probably underpriced a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the third striker slot because we see how attractive some of the players are, and how important is it to have a third playing striker, do you feel, heading into this season?
Yeah, I said I was at a point where maybe I do like a non-playing, like maybe a Mark Gee or maybe a Mara, but the more I think about it, I wouldn't mind having like a Vardy or even a Armstrong or someone who's going to play and has a little bit of upside, because Armstrong, a lot of people have got PTSD from when he come into the Premier League last time. I don't think he was ready to be in the Premier League, and we saw that. I think he had 2 goals for the whole season, but the Armstrong I've seen in the preseason, the Armstrong in the championship last year, he's incredible. So I definitely think 5.5 is a nice little option. I think there might be Pedro as well at that price. Or you can go the 0.5 up and go Minions as your third striker. So
that's
definitely think that there's a solid argument.
Yeah, it was very popular once the game got released, and his price was over 20%, but he didn't go to the preseason trip on Japan with the Seagulls. He probably got flocked by his own Seagulls, to be fair. That's why he is staying put. Now, I've got some comments, as per usual. Carter Holland, welcome to the Addicts podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. Harvey Barnes, yes, he's only played 7 games last season, but he scored 5 goals and 3 assists. A fair competitor behind Anthony Gordon, who's priced at 7.5 million and is proving to be a popular asset. Fair statement?
Yeah, I think I just don't know whether he's in a position to get consistent minutes with a fit Gordon.
Gary says, if we save our transfers for 3 weeks, we do a new 3 changes if Standouts appear, which I think during it, good things come in threes. Sometimes that could be the way to go, but if you're doing 3 changes at once and then something else occurs, 1 to 2 week cycle, you might want to use your transfers in between. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I think we'll get more reading on shit. So, I nearly threw up my pizza for a moment. And we'll get more reading. Oh God, this is the time when I had a Dan FPL mate on and the whole entire water spilled out. So it was just how it was. But
well, lucky I'm not as important, mate. So,
how do you see this strategy going?
Yeah, that's actually a good point you bring up. I'm just looking at having the multiple transfers. It's going to be a lot easier to move towards a Haaland or move away from a Haaland or these expensive assets, because usually when you want to do that, you've had to use 2 to 3 transfers. It's had to be over 2 weeks, or you've had to take a hit. Well, now you could bank those 3 transfers, and there's the way to move to a Haaland or move off a Haaland. So, yeah, I actually think that's really good. Like, you've got 3 transfers there. You can do 3 standout picks, or you can use the 3 picks to then get a Haaland in.
I like that, and in full agreement, because that seems to be the circumstance sometimes, especially if a premium's injured and you want to afford another, but from a different position, you've got to have to make those certain ones go to -4, -8. But now at worst, it could probably just be a -4 hit, but you could use all the free transfers at once. Kulu at striker, any interest from Billy? Any interest on your end, Quentin?
I'm not sold that he is going to be playing striker. I have a feeling that they're either going to play Son up top, or they're going to give Lancashire a go, or they're going to be in the market for Tony or someone. I don't think Andrew's going to go into the season without getting a striker.
That's fair. I think Son might be playing a crucial role, and we've seen him in the latest preseason game going with a goal and 2 assists. 2 assists in Japan. I want to talk about team budget now, because we talked about the importance of trying to fill that 100 million bracket. As reiterated earlier, does it really depend on Erling Haaland and whether you buy him or not? How about budget?
I think so.
Squad?
But even there's so many players that it's a 50-50 decision. Is it Son, or are you going to go Johnson in the midfield from Spurs, which then opens up how you can format your team? And then obviously the likes of Vardiol, or are you going to go down to a 5 like a Pedro Porro instead? Like there's so many 50-50 decisions. Are you going to go Salah, or are you going to go Yotta, or are you going to go Salah, or are you going to go Haaland? So I think there's so many different aspects, so many 50-50 decisions, and then also nailing the 5.5 million pick and then nailing the 6.5 million picks. I think most team setups are going to have at least one 5.5, one 6.5, and then a Salah or a Haaland, and then probably a Vardiol and maybe a Porro at the back. So I think it just depends on what strategy you're going to go with, is how you can kind of format your team.
Speaking of teams as well, and what would play a crucial role to complementing your Quetin before, which sides do you feel we should be aiming for in terms of really good fixture runs from the start?
I think from the start, you can look at Crystal Palace. At the moment, I've got Henderson in goal. So I think that's a nice, safe option. You're probably not, expecting the world, but, save points and maybe a clean sheet, 1 or 2 clean sheets. I think United's fixtures, the first 2 aren't too bad. I think Liverpool definitely got good fixtures. Newcastle, good fixtures. I think Forest. I think Leicester actually don't have too bad of a fixture run. They've got the Liverpool game, but they've also got some nice fixtures as well. Fulham, the same, especially for attacking assets like Muniz. You got Man United, depending on how our defense looks. If it's Johnny Evans in the back, full steam ahead for Muniz. But yeah, I think Arsenal, I'm a little bit hesitant. I'm not sure about the first 5 fixtures. I know that you spoke about that before. So I think there is a way you can sort of maybe target City, Newcastle, Liverpool, and then maybe have you could probably prepare for Villa. They don't have the greatest of fixtures, but they do have a couple of nice fixtures in amongst the hard fixtures. So, but yeah, I think, the big ones are probably Newcastle, Liverpool, Leicester, Palace, City.
You mentioned Chelsea?
And Chelsea, yeah. So they've got the hard, tough fixtures.
Mention it, but I didn't want to repeat the same information that you've already said. Because Ben,
Chelsea.
How you were naming them is pretty much naming the entire Premier League. We got up to nearly halfway. You remind me of Rev within the first 8 game weeks of the season. I was going through an entire goalkeeper rotation. Got up to game week 8, and then Jack says, do you want to do the entire fixture list?
Yeah, it's just so many good fixtures.
It is, yeah. For sure. Quentin, there was something that catches your eye. I'm not talking about a pre-season watch, but I have heard that you have got a certain formula you are following. Talk us through it.
Yes. So previous seasons, we always struggle to find defenders that have attacking upside. So in my boredom over the preseason, I decided to come up with the Fantasy Amateurs attacking upside formula. So I got all of the attacking stats, so shots, touches in the box, shots on target, goals, assists. Give them a value depending on the position. So defenders, obviously, the shots, the goals, the touches in the box are worth a bit more compared to other positions, but it's averaged out in the amount of games they played last season, regardless of whether it's the Premier League, the Championship, or another league overseas. And it gives me a number that gives, I guess, an average number across all the games they played last season as their attacking upside. So I can rank defenders on who's more attacking and who's least attacking, and the same with strikers and the same with midfielders. So, I've done, I think, 30 strikers, I think 50 defenders and 50 midfielders. So I'll be releasing those before the season starts, and also throughout the season on our pod, we'll be talking about what players week to week have our attacking upside, what their numbers are for our fantasy attacking upside formula. So yes, it's pretty much every attacking stat is all given a value depending on the position. So obviously the shots are less value for strikers because obviously they're going to be getting shots and they're worth a bit more for defenders. So yeah, it averages out and it gives us a number that we can give each player.
That could be the first of 81 times I say stuff and then I realise I'm still on mute.
But yeah, it's something like, I'm sure there's probably people doing something a bit more in depth out there, but it's more just so when we talk about a player, we can say this player's scored this in attacking upside formula. This is how attacking they're looking, and this is what we consider them when we're talking about sort of attacking defenders with upside.
I like it because I feel it's been a niche area that a lot of managers do miss on. They probably want informative stats when it comes to finding the next attacking defenders. We've had Lord Lundstrom over years. We had Alfie Doughty last season. Could it be Leif Davis come this season? I'm glad you mentioned him because I was at the pizza shop down the road, and someone who I do umpire training with, he's a big Ipswich fan. And I said to him, look, Jimmy, I'll do my very best tonight to pump the tyres up of Leif Davis as much as I possibly can. And I feel you just took a floor back, Quentin, and I'm so glad you did 20 minutes in.
Mate, I'll reveal one score. So Leif Davis is actually number one attacking upside for defenders using the Fantasy Amateurs attacking upside formula. So he's sitting at a whopping 4.42.
Damn. So that's goals.
So that's goals, assists, touches in the box, chances created, successful crosses, everything. So we'll go through his stats. So these are some of his stats. So last season, he finished with 18 assists, 2 goals. He had 31 shots, 125 chances created. He had 99 crosses, successful crosses. So these aren't just crosses, these are successful crosses that are accurate. Then you're looking at 77 touches in the box.
This is staggering.
So, like, stats are stats, and that's great. But when you're watching highlights from last season, he just looks incredible. And I have a feeling he could be featuring for England in the next year.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. That is absolutely unbelievable. For someone who's come out of the championship too. So Ipswich have got Liverpool, Man City in their first 2 games, and then they have a really nice fixture run. Anyone else on the promoted sides who've somewhat caught your eye, or just any players in general during pre-season that you have not mentioned yet?
I was trying to look at a player from Wolves. I'm not sure what he's
Gomez?
No, not Gomez, a defender. I'm pretty sure he's a defender. He's playing like a wing back for I'm just getting his name now.
It's not 8 million,
he had 2. No, definitely not. It is what's his name? Pedro Lima. So he's 18-year-old Brazilian player. He played wing back in their friendly today. He had 2 disallowed goals, but he was literally like a winger in the box, Aiton Nori style. And I'm pretty sure he's classed as a defender. I'm trying to look it up now, but I could imagine he'd be around that 4.0 mark. And if he can get a start, he could be a player to look at.
In addition to the 4.0 defenders options, I think there's 2 as well. Harwood Bellis from Southampton, who started more than 40 games in the championship last season. And Barco from Brighton. I've heard it's a name that has really emerged, and I think he may start over a Stupinian while the Ecuadorian is out injured to start the season. I don't know, have you got a bit of Barco in your eye?
I'm
not the
interested
Barco from shopping, of course. That's with the DE involved. I'm talking about the Barco fight.
I'm kind of want to look at how long Purvis is going to be out for, because Brighton's fixtures are a little bit like all over the shop to start the season. There's some good ones, some bad ones, and I just have an ink.
Sorry, I was talking like Zerbi, who's now left.
I have an inkling that we might only get maybe 1 or 2 games from him, and then Purvis will be back. So that's probably the only thing that's holding me back.
It's a strange one if that's the case, because you would be booking a transfer in game week 3 with everything else out of our control. Until then, that doesn't sit well with me. So okay, if that's the case, then probably just wouldn't bother.
Yeah, I'd probably look at a little bit more clarity on Purvis' injury, because it's saying that he's going to miss a little bit at the start of the season, but then there's reports are saying he might be fit for week 2, week 3. So I have no idea. But another player, is it Faze from Leicester, the Dutch, Belgium centre back? Yeah, 4.0 as well.
And he started a fair bit for Leicester, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he can score a goal. I think he scored a goal in the Euros.
Yeah, right. Yeah, with Faze, that would have been for Belgium.
And a fit Luke Shaw.
You're running it back to 2014 during the Paul Pogba days now.
So, yeah, I think Luke Shaw could be an underpriced asset based on what he can do when he's fit and playing every week. And I think last season, Man United had their first choice back for 5 games, and they kept 4 clean sheets.
Okay, right. Note taken in this instant. Before we go to previewing our drafts, because we have said to the viewers out there, it is going to be quite short. Was there any other talking points you wanted to go over, Quentin, that I may have missed just so far? Because usually I miss something, according to Reidy.
Maybe looking at the importance of position changes. So Nkunku's a midfielder now instead of a striker, and then you got Havertz up top. You've got Gakpo up top. Yoda's back into the middle of the park instead of up top as well. So
yeah, I think there's more variety to choose from in that midfield bracket, which definitely suits Nkunku more favourably. For Havertz, I think he could generally compete as a top 5 scoring forward for the season. He just needs regular game time, and if he keeps that form up, absolutely. But with these sorts of position changes, you would see a far more commodity out of a player if they're classified as a midfielder as opposed to a striker. But you have to position these players in the game that truly reflect their position. And that's probably how as I see it. Just Reidy, great for you to chime in a comment. It's a shame that you're not here, but I'm glad you are just on the sidelines there, giving a bit of yap. That's what we like to see. So Gary has got Son, Salah, Isaac, Nkunku, Havertz, Gordon, and Jota in his team. Briefly on Diogo Jota, what midfield do you feel Arne Slot is going to crave?
I don't know. I'm seeing that they're possibly going to be having Jota playing the number 9. It's going to be him and Nunez interchanging that role. So you're going to have Gakpo, Diaz, Elliott, sort of rotating around those wide positions with Salah, and possibly I think they might have some signings incoming. So there might be another player that's going to be playing in that sort of midfield rotation as well.
Okay, very intriguing. As Soboslai too has actually caught a couple of managers' attention as well. I didn't mean to intercept on your conversation before about the positions being classified. I know we go from one point and then we go to another, and then we get stuck at, and then we go to another. I mean, I was going to say we're pure train ride, but on this channel we're just a complete train wreck.
We're just in cruise control, mate.
That is true. We're
got the windows down.
God. I don't know where you get your humour from, but you're brought up quite well. Don't tell me you went to Audi for that.
Yeah, mate. Best place alive.
Yeah, I know. It's well the cheap stuff.
It's a shopping centre full of 5.5 million FPL picks. And then occasionally you come across the lamb shanks and you're happy.
Look, we can't cancel this pod. We have to keep the show going running. Anyone else in terms of players have been classified? I feel those are probably the big ones.
Do you think? Yeah. What would you do in comparison of Brennan Johnson or Son? Do you think the extra money's worth it with Son, or do you think it might be 1 week it might be Brennan Johnson, next week it might be Son?
I think it's the extra worth of money. It's a Son's definitely consideration, but when you think about Brennan Johnson and his impact on the team once he started, my answer is no. I actually think you could do a lot with that extra 3.5 million, especially how quickly used up at 100 million is. Just got to see Johnson confidently start, and he's pretty much slotted in. I think Spurs are going to have an absolute field day away at less in game week 1, and probably at home. Game week 2 at home to Everton is probably a better fixture on paper, but I think it'll be the harder game for them to try and overcome. Out of the two, I think Leicester under Steve Cooper, that pre-season hasn't been amazing, and that sort of manager vibe, especially that you see from Nottingham Forest, they're not sensational defensively.
Yeah. No, I think the way Andrew's got Spurs humming, like I think it was the 30-minute mark. They must have been doing quarters in their friendly game the other day, and Andrew was literally like shouting at him saying, keep pressing, don't relax. Like he's literally, and we've seen what they've got rid of maybe 4 or 5 players in the off season. He's literally got the players that he wants, and he's getting more players in. So I think players are bought into the system now. So it wouldn't surprise me if they start fast.
Spot on. Hit the pinnacle there with the mighty Postecoglou, who ended up having a postseason friendly at the MCG 2. I mean, just 3 days after their away clash at Sheffield United. This team can't stop. I mean, they did stop winning for a while. That's why they ended up just outside the top 4. That's the only thing that stopped in their tracks, getting all 3 points.
They didn't stop winning enough for us to get into Champions League. So
yes, that is right. I think it might be time to reveal our drafts as things stand. 2 weeks ago. Am I right in saying, Quentin? Should we get this party bus on the road? All right, so I've got one here. I think this is Revs. So we're going to do Revs, we're going to do Reidy, then we're going to get to you, and then we're going to get to me. Because I'll tell you why you're saving the best for last, because my team won't show up due to permission denied. That's the game plan of how these drafts are going to go. So the first one is like this. So, looks to be big at the back and at goalkeeping front. I like the premium option of Saka. So I'm just trying to figure out who this other one is. Oh, yeah, Mo Salah captain. That's all right. And then that's actually not a bad front 3 in Rev's side. Quentin, what's your take on this one?
I actually don't mind it. Christmas Wood showed last year that he can definitely find a goal, but the only issue I have with that pick is with Taiwo coming back in the preseason. He looks fit, so whether they're going to be swapping or whether they're going to find a way to start both of them, but I feel like that could be a little issue. But I think not many people are going to have Saka to start the season, so I think that could be a bit of a differential. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to be a differential as well, which is a nice differential because, as I said, I think the way Slot's setting Liverpool up this season, I think Trent's going to benefit a lot in attack. Pickford in goals, I'd maybe look at downgrading. I don't know. I think at his price, you can probably get someone a bit cheaper and maybe give you the same amount of returns. But I think overall for a non-Haaland draft, I think it's pretty good.
I'm with you there too. I think Isaac and Watkins up front. If you're not going Haaland, you want to go with those two to be specific. Salah and Saka, good premium dynamics there. You could have a pick of one or the other. triple Newcastle. Livramento is probably the interesting one. That's all. You got Mikalenko, you got Barco. Like, I think you have the right options at the minute, and Morgan Rogers, who has had a really good preseason. The second choice goalkeeper, 4.0s. I think Turner is probably going to have to go soonish because he's going to be third choice for Forest.
What do you think? Is it going to be Livramento and Trippier? Is Livramento's competition Dan Burn and Hall?
Could well be. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a minefield at Newcastle defence at the moment. I think Lewis Hall needs to get more minutes if he wants to prove himself at that club for the coming season. Livramento could be a gem. But I think it's Dan Burn, the safer option at the minute, but he's got less goal for it.
Yeah, Dan Burns more like the original chips. Livramento's like the barbecue ribs just come out. Want to try it? Could be nice. Or it might have just been better to go for the original.
Because, oh my God. God, this is getting more embarrassing by the minute.
No, but really, like, you make a good point there. Is Dan Burn the safe option? Are they going to start the season and try play safe, or whether they're going to give Livramento the first few games to see how he goes?
Jeez, barbecue ribs, Livramento analogy. God. Anytime Newcastle's been mentioned this season, I'm going to go back to barbecue ribs, Ted Lasso, while throwing the dart, barbecue sauce. Pew!
It's a great show.
It is. Now this is Reidy's draft. Now, because before I get to Reidy's draft, this is why I am the best podcast member, because I'll make sure I take everyone into account. Because in Gameweek 37, Reidy and his mate who joined on, Trophy Mo, great bloke by the way, and said some cracking points on the show at the time. I say to Reidy during the week, all right, make sure you do me one favour. Just show my Gameweek 37 preview draft, please. About 3 times during the week, this is what happened. Just forgot about it on the run sheet. So I want to make sure that everyone feels included. Reidy's draft, speaking of inclusion, this is his at the moment. Pickford again, Burn and Vardiol, both mutuals. A different midfield. And then got Haaland up front. I don't mind it. I think it's pretty good. Petrovic. Is it going to be a viable second keeper option? Quentin, what's happening in your corner?
I don't mind it. The Diaz pick. I think that could be, it could be a masterclass, or it could just be 2 points galore, and you're looking at the likes of Jota and Salah just hauling. But obviously, there's been a bit of injury cloud around Haaland. They reckon that he's not fully injured, but they're not sure what's going on, which leaves a little bit of a mystery. But you can always go back down. I think Gibbs White, I'd nearly go to like a Hudson-Odoi or an Alenga, where you're saving a bit of money there, and then possibly using that money to then upgrade Luis Diaz to maybe Diego Jota, who I think could be maybe a better option if you're going to go without Salah.
Do you feel Jota from Diaz is worth it? Does it feel like an upgrade?
It just depends if Jota gets that number 9 spot to start the season. And as I said, those first couple of fixtures are pretty decent for Liverpool.
Yeah. Before I get to the front, I want to go through these defenders, because I think it seems that he's gone for 6 million.
The original chips.
Yeah, the original chips. So if Burns the original chips, what's Robinson?
Robertson, the sour cream and Chaz.
Conza. Hey, waka. Hey. And then Robinson must be Rodrigo Muniz sidekick. That's how.
Yeah, no, I like Robertson. I think he's a good pick. I'd like to see if they replace Paulinho in the middle of the park.
That's a big loss too.
Yeah, I think he was a big reason why the defense was probably good at stages last season, because he can keep the ball and he's pretty good defensively. So I think that might be a little factor into Robertson, whether he's going to be a pick or not, whether they can replace Paulinho in the middle.
Okay, I got one thing here too. I feel with Reidy's team, he's going to have benching dilemmas each week. I could just already see. He's got a lot of mid-price midfielders. I feel with that fifth midfield slot, he needs to downgrade, and it could be from the Gibbs White outlet, in compliment to what you're saying there. Because you got Nkuku in your team, and he's really straight in the first bench slot. Are you kidding? You're absolutely kidding.
I would even maybe...
I know he's at home to Man City, but you'd still start him at home to Man City.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be downgrading Gibbs White to maybe a Mavidi or a Minte or a Lenga or Hudson-Odoi. And then using that money to maybe upgrade Burn or Branthwaite.
Yeah, I just feel that it is a good squad, but I don't think it's distributed in the right allocation of budget for certain pockets.
Yeah, I think he's got depth. So obviously, if there's players that get ruled out at the last minute, he's got people that can come in. But yeah, I feel like he can maybe go a little bit cheaper in some areas and then upgrade in other areas.
We wanted to talk about how we set up our squads and the 5 transfers in advance. It's a really good question here from Hillbilly. And Hillbilly, thank you very much for tuning in. We do appreciate it. You lads penciled in a rough wildcard week of building long-term squads and playing it by ear. What survivor you're going to get out of this queue?
It's interesting because, as I said, there's so many different options now with the banking up to 5 transfers where you can maybe leave the wild card a little bit longer, or you could just do a wild card week 2 after week 1 if everything doesn't go to plan, and know that it's not the worst because you can then bank 5 transfers and then do a mini wild card. So I'm probably not going to pencil in a wild card. It's probably just going to be looking at what strategy I go with, whether it's using it as like a free hit, like I said earlier, or doing it straight up if I've had a disaster start to the season.
Straight to your draft now, Quentin. Now, because we're seeing some Pickfords, Vardiols, original chips out of the oven. I can't actually get it out of my head now. But this is one of your drafts. You've done 2, and can I be honest, all right? You're just like a typical pundit who decides, all right, someone's that expensive to go, I'm going to do one with this and one with that. Because at the end of the day, Quentin, you're only going to choose one draft. This is yours without Haaland. How inclined are you probably going to go with this?
I'm still not sold on the Rashford pick. Obviously, watching their preseason games, he's looked a lot sharper, kind of give me vibes from 2 seasons ago. But I still want to see maybe a little bit more. But I'm looking at that pick being possibly either a Hudson-Odoi, a Lenga, Minte, one of those 5.5 assets possibly, or I could even go across to an Mbeumo from Brentford, depending on obviously how they're going to line up the start of the season. So I'm not 100% locked in on that, but a few of the plays that are probably non-negotiable in that is Pedro Porro, Vardiel, Davis, Johnson, Salah, Mavidi, Son, Isaac, and Meniz are probably the ones that I'd sort of keep in there cemented in, and the rest are kind of going to be possibly moved around depending on who I go with. And the 2 4.5 million keepers, obviously the first game of the season, Sanchez, tough fixture against City, so you start Henderson, and then you can move back and forth, and last season I'd try to do that and I always picked the wrong keeper. So definitely does have its downfalls, but I think at the moment it's a solid starting point. But obviously Johnson, Son, whether I go the double up in the midfield or whether I go elsewhere and maybe look to maybe a cheaper Arsenal asset or maybe a second Liverpool asset. But at the moment, sort of that's my draft without Haaland.
But it's got one man in there where the money talks, the Rodrigo man, Rodrigo Menez.
Mate, I rate him. I rate him big time, mate. I'm hoping Smith Rowe can channel his early Arsenal form and become sort of like that creative spark that they sort of have sometimes with Andreas Pereira, but obviously double time.
Okay. Well said. But if you had to put that in a food analogy, what would it be?
For what the
Just Smith Rowe.
Smith Rowe.
Yeah.
You know, like fellow white people, just add a bit of salt. All Meniz needs is a little bit of salt.
God. Oh. Why did I go down that path? I just knew Quentin had something up his sleeve in regard to food.
Because some people are cooking up a team, they put Meniz in, but is there enough salt?
Yeah, but you'd think with what he had, it was a bit more than the seasoning, mate. Was he like the actual sauce that went on top of a steak?
Meniz is like a tomahawk steak, and Pereira was the salt or the garlic butter.
Spicy meatballs. Oh, we're turning into a Channel 10 show, Ready, Steady, Cook, an FPL team only to get roasted by someone else. So that's without Haaland. Now we're going to do it with, and it is like this. So there's a couple of changes.
Yeah, so obviously I had to do the sacrifice with Son going down to Johnson to get sort of my Spurs midfield option. But as I said, I've got Hudson-Odoi there, but Hudson-Odoi could be Alanga, could be Minte, could be Kamada from Crystal Palace, a few of the options that I'm looking at. And obviously I've got Shaw in there. He could go down to a 4.5 player. And then I could maybe upgrade Livramento if he's not going to start. But I'm pretty happy with that side. Muniz obviously is in there as well. There's been options to maybe move him down to Pedro from Brighton, Armstrong from Southampton. But at the moment, Muniz is there at the moment. And, you know, Turner could be third choice. So that's pretty much nearly just playing one goalkeeper and Sanchez every week. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment. But yeah, most of the people that are staying in that side, as I mentioned before, Pedro Porro, he's not leaving my side. Vardiel, not leaving my side. Salah, Johnson, and Mavidi, Nkunku, Isaac, and Haaland are probably the ones that are staying in there. The rest are sort of can move in and out.
So I'm just having a look at how this changes. So it's less in the midfield with Haaland in there. It seems to be less in defence too and less in keeper just for one player. That's how you're scraping the barrel for getting Haaland into your team.
Yeah, so it's like Arsenal defence or not Arsenal defence pretty much.
Yeah, if you're looking at that in isolation, I think it's probably worth having Haaland in your team. I'll prioritise a Man City striker instead of investing in Arsenal's defence only because of their fixture run to start the season.
Yeah, see, I think game week 1, Combs just made a good point. Mavidi plays Spurs. I mean, he plays United. I definitely think Miniz could get something against United. I actually think Mavidi could actually get something against Spurs as well. Just the way Spurs play, straight out attack, play very high, leave themselves vulnerable on the counter. And I thought Leicester last season did pretty good on the counter, but that was with Dewsbury Hall as well. So be interesting to see if they can replace him.
Yeah, it would be. Final draft, getting into my corner now and just seeing the experiments with salt and oven-cooked chips and potential barbecue ribs. It's got really not much of that. It does include the oven chips down back, but this is my team at the moment. We got Sanchez in goal, and I think a keeper situation may need to be fixed. Mikolenko, the toffee from a candy store, just slotting in down the spine there. Got Vardiel, who had a terrific run. So if I had to, just considering we're on food analogies, just for one moment, I put in a message, and it would have been one of our groups. That's if I could get it, but I don't think I can at the moment. No, I can't. But it would be, you know what, mate? I thought I had this, but I don't. So I just kind of give up. But this is just how it is at the moment. Salah's a steak, Eze's a mash, Haaland's a plate, Meniz is a sauce. Seems like I'm trying to recite the whole thing now. Mikolenko's like that little sweet tooth that people require. If you want a good back spine about the team, as Vardiel, oven-cooked chips. Sanchez, the trader, just gets the job done on minimum wage. Gordon, so, you need a kids' television show on your side. So that's why we go for Postman Pat. Isaac just seems to be the essential at the moment. That likes to do this to his ears every time he celebrates. We got the beautiful Danish Anderson on the bench. Morgan Rogers, just the preseason hot seller. They're selling like hotcakes, to be fair. Harbour Bellis over there. And Ward, I know I'm maybe in the wrong season, but it's just for 22-23 season vibes on the Leicester City. So I couldn't find the photo. It sounded like I could just recite the whole thing.
Mate, and Rogers, he's got the baller haircut, the bleach blonde hair. So that counts for something as well. And
I've got your main man, but I feel like I'm a bit more bullish on Muniz' chances than the actual person that got him as a proper differential within the final third of last season. And I actually think at Man United, Old Trafford fixture's really good.
Yeah, and if they roll out, 46-year-old Johnny Evans in the back line, I'll be licking my lips.
About Man United. Didn't they have an injury crisis in their latest preseason friendly with Euro out for a while and Haaland?
Yeah, Euro's out for 3 months and Haaland's out for 4 to 6 weeks. So that's what sort of I got Rashford in that draft because it looks like he might play up top depending on where Xerxes is at for fitness. The player that we signed for up top. And then also Diallo has been really good in preseason. So whether he snags a wing spot with Rashford going into striker, it opens up another option. I think he might be 5.0 as well.
Quentin, if you had to give thoughts on the team at the moment, how do you see it?
I actually don't mind it. Eze is a real interesting pick. There's a lot of, Twitter talk out there that he's not the same player without Elise, but we didn't really get a good sample size without Elise with the new coach because the new coach was a lot more attacking than the previous coach. So I think he's a great pick. I have a little bit of PTSD from last year when I started with him for 5 weeks and I didn't get anything from him. But I think this Kamada combining with Eze, I think that could unlock Eze like Elise did. And I think you could get some nice differential points to start the season. Gibbs White, I think, is a good pick, but also I like Hudson-Odoi, so you can maybe downgrade to maybe him or Alenga and then use that money to maybe upgrade Burn. As I said, original chips, nothing fancy, but it'll do the job. Mikolenko, potential to be a really good asset. Just I'm not sure about Everton. I'm not 100% sold on whether they're going to not shit the bed this season. But I think overall that team's pretty good. Rogers, I think, deserves minutes. And if he gets minutes, he's incredible. He's been so good in preseason. So, I actually don't mind this side at all. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I sort of think it might be worth downgrading Rogers to a Harry Winks only because you'd probably rather have a second 4.5 goalkeeper. Because I don't think Ward's first choice at Leicester, and it might be important to have 2 playing keepers to start the season. Because the worst thing you want to have is someone go down to 3.9.
Yeah. Well, what was the big debate the other season Leicester were in? Was it Ward and who was the other goalkeeper? And no one knew who was going to be starting. It was one of life's mysteries.
Yeah, Everson. Oh my God. Yeah. It was.
Those are the days.
Oh, those were the days. Jeez.
Did you see Colin's comment?
Oh, I love it. I mean, we've gone from food oven baked chips to now how do we rate players and then Nando's flavors. So Sanchez is the lemon and herb. I really want to know who's the hot, who's the extra hot.
Well, watching Sanchez. Oh, that Sanchez save today made me feel like he could be extra hot. Could be a bit of a paprika.
Bit of a paprika. Okay. Yeah. Man United probably now needs a new fitness coach. I mean, we probably need a new food talk channel, the way this has gone for this evening's episode. But we got Reidy, who says your team is a work in progress. Well, if that's the case, yeah, your team looks like a construction site.
It's like the Indian restaurant in my town. It's been under construction since like February last year.
Any
The
progress?
food's good though. The food's good. We know the food's good. It's just a matter of it's just not ready yet. Like Reidy, we know Reidy's gonna have a good team. It's just hasn't finished constructing his team yet.
But is he the hitman or the shitman this season? Because it seems that could be the same old story. That's what it might be. I think that wraps it up for today's opening pod. I mean, we were only meant to go 45, 50 minutes, but considering we just talked about food for 20 of it, we've done okay. I mean, the F is meant to be for fantasy, not for food.
Mate, you need to reach different audiences, mate. If you want to continue to grow the channel, you need to delve into the foodies.
I might leave it as that. So that's it for our first draft reveals. I hope you guys who have tuned in got something out of it. And if you didn't, fair enough. We go again in a couple of weeks. A great insight, as per usual, especially from you, Quentin. We've got our next show would be in a couple of weeks. So that'll be proper Gameweek 1. This is probably a bit more of a laid-back conversational type. But in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be proper Thor Hammer style. Everyone revealing their final drafts. Panic stations galore. But for today, it was a bit of a warm-up to the stat pad. Let's say that. We got one here. If you aren't looking at a squad filler, just make sure they aren't too heavily owned, as they could easily go down in price if they don't perform. That's a good point. How much of a crucial role does ownership play when it comes to choosing enablers?
Yeah, I think maybe if you're looking, depending on how the rest of your side looks, if you're looking at maybe 2 to 3 enablers and the rest of your sides, you got a couple of differentials, you can probably look at the most popular owned enabler and maybe stick them in if you're tossing up between them and another pick. But yeah, I think there's probably going to be a lot of sides where they're choosing between 4 players and they pick that one player and they're sitting there game week 1 and that one player gets like red card or it does nothing, and then the other 3 players, score big, and then Twitter, you know what it's like after the first game week, there's people on there saying I told you so, and bandwagon starting and people freaking out because they didn't get on the player. But I think if you are tossing up between 1 or 2 players and you don't have too many differentials on your side, you probably want to go the least owned one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else before I wrap it up for today? Is there just anyone that you just wanted to spill out? Don't get me wrong, you'll be back on the show. You've done it good enough.
Well, stay tuned for our social channels because we've got 4 preseason pods coming up. So we'll preview every single game. Yeah, so we'll have, I think, 5 teams per episode, and we'll go through new additions to their side, how they've gone in the preseason, plays we're looking at, and then a couple of assets that we've done the formula for the fantasy amateurs attacking upside for, and then we'll reveal some of our attacking upside numbers so we can get a gauge for our listeners, can get a gauge on where their plays are looking at, where they rank in our attacking upside formula. So we've got all that to come. And I think I've just put a thread up on Twitter and our Facebook with my takeaways from all the preseason games. So I've been quite busy. I think there'll be maybe 60 preseason highlights that I'll be looking at and just doing my takeaways. So yeah, head over to our channel. That'll be up there as well. It's pinned at the top of the page, and you can see what I've taken out of all the preseason friendlies so far. And I think there's a lot more to come.
The Addicts oven baked chips and the quintessential analysis. What's there not to like during the preseason, especially at the start of August? That will do it from both of us. Quentin, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, it's been good. And yeah, it's disappointing that the Hitman wasn't on, but I'm sure I'll catch up with him next time on the show.
Hey, shit, Jack. Catch you on the other side. Ciao, ciao.